What if I told you Rome didn't fall because of barbarian strength? What if the greatest empire in human history destroyed itself from the inside? August 24th, 410 AD. The Eternal City falls for the first time in 800 years. But here's the twist that will blow your mind. The Visigoth king who sacks Rome? He used to be a Roman general. The gates that swing open? Unlocked from the inside by Romans. The 40,000 warriors who pour through the streets? Half of them are former Roman soldiers seeking revenge for one of the most brutal massacres in history. This isn't the watered-down version you learned in school. This is what really happened when Rome fell. And trust me, the truth is way more insane than the legend. Picture this. Dawn breaks over Rome on August 24th, 410 AD. The city holds nearly 800,000 people, making it the largest metropolis on Earth. The Aurelian walls, 20 feet high and 12 feet thick, stretch 11 miles around the 7 hills. For 8 centuries, these walls have stood unbreached. 800 years. No foreign enemy has entered Rome since the Gauls came in 390 BC. That's longer than the entire history of the United States, times 3. Romans believe their city is eternal, untouchable, blessed by the gods. They're about to learn a brutal lesson. Outside the walls, 40,000 Visigoths stand ready. Their king, Alaric, sits on his horse, staring at the Salarian gate. And then, something impossible happens. The gate begins to open. Not from battering rams. Not from siege engines. From the inside. Someone is letting them in. Within minutes, the screams began. The city that conquered the world is about to be conquered. But the real question isn't how Rome fell. It's why Romans opened their own gates to let the barbarians in. To understand that answer, we need to go back 16 years. Rewind to September 394 AD. A massive battle is raging in modern-day Slovenia, called the Battle of Frigidus. The Eastern Roman Emperor Theodosius is fighting to unify the empire under his rule. Standing in his way is a rebel Roman general named Arbogast. Theodosius needs shock troops to break Arbogast's lines, so he calls on his Gothic allies. Enter Alaric, a young Gothic commander leading 20,000 warriors. These aren't enemies of Rome, they're federates, allied barbarian tribes who've agreed to fight for the empire in exchange for land and protection. Alaric sends his men straight into the meat grinder. For 2 days, Gothic warriors die by the thousands. When the dust settles, Theodosius has won. But here's the kicker. 10,000 Goths are dead, half of Alaric's army, and their reward? Basically nothing. Alaric expected a promotion, maybe even the rank of Magister Militum, Master of Soldiers, one of the highest military positions in Rome. Instead, he gets a pat on the head and a dismissal. The message is clear. Romans view Goths as expendable. Use them up, throw them away. Alaric doesn't forget this. Neither do his people. When Emperor Theodosius dies in 395, the Goths raise Alaric on their shields and proclaim him their first king. Not because they want to destroy Rome, because they want respect from Rome. For the next 15 years, Alaric plays a complex game. Sometimes he's negotiating for land and recognition. Sometimes he's raiding to apply pressure. Sometimes he's fighting for Rome, sometimes against it. But always, he's trying to secure a future for his people within the Roman system. He doesn't want to destroy the empire. He wants to be part of it. Remember that. It's important. Now enter the most important Roman you've never heard of, Stilicho. This guy is half Vandal, half Roman, married to the niece of Emperor Theodosius. When Theodosius dies, his empire is split between his 2 young sons. Honorius, aged 10, gets the Western Empire. Arcadius gets the Eastern Empire. And Stilicho? He becomes the guardian of young Honorius and the most powerful man in the West. For 13 years, Stilicho is the only thing holding the Western Roman Empire together. Barbarian tribes are flooding across every frontier. In 406, the Rhine frontier completely collapses. Vandals, Suebi, and Alans pour into Gaul by the hundreds of thousands. Britain revolts. The empire is hemorrhaging territory. Stilicho is playing whack-a-mole with existential threats, and he's running out of hammers. So he makes a calculated decision. Turn Alaric from an enemy into an ally. He defeats Alaric twice in battle, first in Macedonia, then at Palencia in 402. But instead of destroying the Goths, he offers them a deal. Alaric becomes Magister Militum of Illyricum, a Roman general in charge of the Balkans. In exchange, Rome will pay the Goths 4,000 pounds of gold. That's about $240 million in today's money. Alaric accepts. For a brief moment, it looks like this might actually work. The Goths have legitimacy. Rome has 40,000 battle-hardened warriors guarding the Balkans. Everyone wins. But in Ravenna, the new capital of the Western Empire, a snake is whispering poison in Emperor Honorius' ear. His name is Olympius, a court official who hates barbarians and hates Stilicho even more. Olympius spreads rumors. Stilicho is too powerful. He's half barbarian, so he can't be trusted. He's plotting to put his own son on the eastern throne. Honorius, who's now in his 20s but still weak and paranoid, starts to believe it. And here's where everything goes to hell. August 408. Roman soldiers across Italy suddenly mutiny. In coordinated attacks, they slaughter Gothic federates and their families in the streets. Women, children, doesn't matter. If you're Gothic, you die. Historians estimate up to 30,000 are massacred. Think about that number. 30,000 people murdered because of their ethnicity by the same Roman army they've been fighting alongside. The survivors flee north to Alaric's camp. Among them, 10,000 trained Roman soldiers of Gothic descent. Alaric's army just doubled in size, and every single one of these refugees has a blood debt to collect. But wait, it gets worse. On August 22, 408, Stilicho is arrested on Emperor Honorius's orders. The man who saved Rome countless times, who defeated rebels and barbarians, who held the Western Empire together through sheer competence, is dragged from sanctuary in a church and executed. His crime? Treason he didn't commit, based on rumors spread by a jealous bureaucrat. His son Eucharius is hunted down and murdered in Rome. And that payment to Alaric, the 4,000 pounds of gold that was supposed to seal their alliance? Cancelled. Olympius, now the power behind the throne, declares open season on all barbarians. More purges, more killings, more refugees flooding to Alaric. Every single promise Rome made to the Goths is broken. Every treaty, every agreement, every assurance of safety, gone. Imagine you're Alaric. You've spent 15 years trying to work within the system. You lost 10,000 men fighting for Rome at Frigidus. You've negotiated in good faith. You've accepted every insult, every slight, every delay, because you believe that eventually Rome will honor its word. And then, in the span of a week, Rome murders 30,000 of your people, executes the one Roman general who treated you with respect, and cancels the payment that would have fed your army. What would you do? Alaric tries one more time. He sends envoys to Ravenna with new demands. He doesn't want gold anymore. He doesn't want silver or silk or titles. He just wants land in Noricum, a relatively poor province, and enough grain to feed his people. That's it. The historian Olympiodorus, writing years later, calls these terms extremely moderate and reasonable. Alaric is basically begging Rome to let him settle peacefully. Honorius, safe behind the marshes of Ravenna, refuses. He's convinced that 10,000 Hun mercenaries are on their way to crush the Goths. Spoiler alert, they're not coming. Honorius sends an insulting letter that's read aloud at the negotiations. Alaric's face goes dark. After 15 years of betrayals, after 30,000 murdered people, after every promise broken, after lowering his demands again and again, Rome still treats him like dirt. Something breaks inside him. The time for talking is over. If Rome won't let him in as a friend, he'll come in as an enemy. October 408. Alaric marches south through Italy, and not a single Roman army moves to stop him. The Western Empire is so depleted, so disorganized, so leaderless after Stilicho's execution, that the Goths move as if going to a festival, according to the historian Zosimus. They reach Rome in November and lay siege. Now, you need to understand what a siege means for a city of 800,000 people that produces almost zero food. Everything Rome eats comes by ship from North Africa and Egypt, up the Tiber River to the port of Ostia. Alaric doesn't need to break the walls. He just seizes Ostia and waits. Within weeks, Rome is starving. Grain rations are cut in half, then to 1/3. People start dying in the streets. Disease spreads like wildfire through the packed neighborhoods. Bodies rot unburied. Panic grips the Senate. Some senators suggest reviving pagan sacrifices to the old gods to save the city. Pope Innocent I reluctantly agrees, but only if it's done privately. The pagan priests say, no, it has to be public, in the forum, and the Christians refuse. Rome can't even agree on which gods to beg. The Senate sends envoys to negotiate. These guys, full of Roman arrogance, actually boast to Alaric that Rome's citizens are trained for war and ready to fight. Alaric laughs in their faces. He says, the thickest grass is easier to cut than the thinnest. Translation: the bigger you are, the harder you fall. The envoys ask what terms he'll accept to lift the siege. Alaric's demands are staggering. 5,000 pounds of gold, 30,000 pounds of silver, 4,000 silk tunics, 3,000 scarlet-dyed hides, and 3,000 pounds of pepper. One envoy, probably shaking, asks what will be left for the citizens of Rome. Alaric replies with just 2 words: your lives. The Senate has no choice. They strip and melt down pagan statues to meet the ransom. Zosimus records that they destroyed a statue of Virtus, the Roman goddess of courage, and that with it, All that remained of Roman valor was totally extinguished. The symbolism is perfect. Rome is literally melting down its courage to pay off barbarians. The ransom is paid in December 1408, and Alaric withdraws. But this isn't over. Not even close. For 18 months, this insane dance continues. Alaric keeps lowering his demands. He doesn't want gold, doesn't want silver, just land and grain. Just peace. Honorius keeps refusing, waiting for those Huns who will never arrive. At one point, Alaric gets so desperate he forces the Roman Senate to declare a puppet emperor, an old senator named Priscus Attalus. The idea is maybe if there's a Western emperor who's actually in Rome instead of hiding in Ravenna, they can make a deal. It doesn't work. Attalus is useless. By summer 410, Alaric strips him of power and tries one final negotiation with Honorius in person. The two sides meet outside Ravenna. An agreement seems close. Then, without warning, a Gothic chieftain named Sarus, who's loyal to Rome, attacks Alaric's camp. The attack fails, but the message is crystal clear. Honorius doesn't want peace. He wants war. And Alaric? After 15 years of patience, after countless betrayals, after 30,000 of his people massacred, after lowering his demands to almost nothing, after being insulted and dismissed and attacked during peace talks, Alaric is done. If Rome wants fire, he'll bring an inferno. August 24th, 410 AD. The moment that changes everything. The Salarian Gate on the north side of Rome swings open. Not from siege engines, not from assault. Someone inside the city, possibly slaves promised freedom, possibly traitors, possibly just Romans who want the nightmare to end, unlocks it from the inside. The Visigoths pour through. And what happens next is actually surprising. Alaric gives specific orders. Spare the churches. St. Peter's and St. Paul's are declared sanctuaries. Anyone who reaches them is safe. This isn't total war. This is controlled vengeance. Pagan temples? Fair game. The old Senate house? Burned. Statues of Jupiter and Mars? Toppled. But churches are protected. Christian Romans who reach sanctuary survive. Alaric, despite everything Rome has done to him, despite the 30,000 murdered Goths, despite 15 years of betrayals, is showing more restraint than Rome showed his people. For 3 days, the Visigoths loot Rome. They take gold, silver, grain, anything valuable and portable. They take slaves, though many slaves voluntarily join them. Senators flee through sewers and secret passages. Some are captured and ransomed. But the killing is actually limited compared to what Rome did in 408. On August 27th, as suddenly as they came, the Goths march out. Alaric doesn't want to occupy Rome. He wants to move south, cross to Sicily, invade North Africa, and seize the grain provinces. He wants to carve out a Gothic kingdom where his people can finally stop wandering and settle permanently. But fate has other plans. As Alaric's forces prepare to cross the Mediterranean, massive storms batter their fleet. Ships and supplies are lost. The invasion is cancelled. Alaric falls ill, probably with fever. By late 410, possibly November, the king who sacked Rome is dead. The Goths bury him in secret, diverting the Busento River, placing his body in the riverbed with his treasure, then returning the water to its course. To this day, Alaric's tomb has never been found. The man who broke Rome's 800-year winning streak takes his secrets to a watery grave. But here's what you need to understand. The sack of Rome sends shockwaves through the ancient world, but it doesn't actually end the Western Roman Empire. Honorius survives until 423. The Western Empire limps on for another 66 years, until 476 when a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer just dismisses the final emperor and sends the imperial regalia to Constantinople. No epic battle, no dramatic siege. Just a quiet acknowledgement that the Western Empire had been dead for decades. Everyone just finally admitted it. The sack of 410 didn't kill Rome. It was the moment everyone realized Rome was already dying. It was the symptom, not the disease. So what's the shocking truth? What's the lesson that echoes through 1,600 years of history? Rome didn't fall because the barbarians were strong. Rome fell because Rome destroyed itself. Think about it. The soldiers who unlocked the Salarian Gate on August 24th, 410? They were Romans, or freed slaves who had no loyalty left to the empire. The 40,000 warriors who marched through the streets seeking revenge? They included 10,000 former Roman soldiers driven out by ethnic massacres. The general leading them? A man who spent 15 years trying to work within the Roman system, who fought for Rome, who negotiated in good faith, who lowered his demands again and again, who just wanted land and peace for his people. Rome had every opportunity to make Alaric an ally. Instead, Rome massacred his refugees, executed the one competent general who could have stopped him, broke every promise, and then had the arrogance to insult him during peace negotiations. The gates were always going to be opened from within, because Rome had spent decades teaching its allies that Roman promises were worthless, that Roman friendship meant expendability, that no matter how much you sacrificed for the empire, you'd always be seen as a disposable barbarian. Alaric didn't conquer Rome with superior tactics or overwhelming force. He conquered Rome because Rome had already conquered itself through betrayal, incompetence, and arrogance. The empire that ruled from Britain to Mesopotamia, that built roads and aqueducts and monuments that still stand today, that created a system of law that shapes modern civilization, destroyed itself because it couldn't adapt. It couldn't see that the world was changing. It couldn't treat its allies with basic respect and honor its agreements. Emperor Honorius, sitting safe in Ravenna, preferred pride to survival. He'd rather see Rome burn than negotiate with a barbarian, even when that barbarian was offering reasonable peace terms. There's actually a story, probably apocryphal but telling, that when a messenger told Honorius, "Rome has perished," the emperor panicked, thinking they meant his favorite chicken, which he'd named Roma. When the messenger clarified they meant the actual city, Honorius was reportedly relieved. That's the level of disconnect between the emperor and reality, and that's why empires fall. Here's the part that should terrify anyone living in a powerful nation today. Rome thought it was too big to fail. For 800 years, those walls had stood unbreached. Romans believed they were eternal, chosen by the gods, destined to rule forever. They couldn't imagine a world where Rome fell because Rome had always been invincible. Until the morning they woke up and realized invincibility was always an illusion. The walls were only as strong as the promises Rome kept. The empire was only as secure as the loyalty of its people, and when Rome broke faith with its allies, when it massacred refugees and executed competent leaders and chose pride over pragmatism, it guaranteed that someone, somewhere, would open those gates from the inside. The eternal city learned what every empire eventually learns. Nothing is eternal. Not Rome. Not anyone. The greatest threat doesn't come from the barbarians at the gate. It comes from the arrogance within the walls. August 24th. 410 AD wasn't the day Rome fell. It was the day Rome finally admitted what had been true for decades. The empire was already dead. Alaric just made it official. The shocking truth is this: Rome sacked itself. The Visigoths were just there to collect the inheritance. And if you think this is ancient history with no relevance to today, remember one thing. Every empire that's ever fallen thought it was too powerful to fail. Every single one believed it was different. Every single one was wrong. The gates are always open from within. Always have been. Always will be.